Okay, yeah. So good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Langi. I'm the project manager for BM, and 4BM stands for Forgotten Bottom Millions. And what we do as Forgotten Bottom Millions is that we share opportunities with young people and women across Africa mostly. Yeah. And what we do also do is that we don't only share opportunities, but just ensure that you are opportunity ready by just organizing trainings like these ones, just to ensure that some of the things that we share, you're actually aware of and have the necessary skills and experience just to take up those such kind of opportunities. Yeah. So every Thursdays we organize such, and so today we're going to talk about the Africa Free Continental Free Trade Area, and we are going to have George Dinda as our speaker for today. Just briefly about George Dinda. So George Dinda is an assistant director of trade at the State Department for Trade, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. He's a trade policy expert with over 15 years of experience in trade promotion and development and trade negotiation, and is currently the national coordinator for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Yeah. So George is going to just highlight what we mean by AfCFTA, what is it, and what does it mean for African entrepreneurs like me and you. Yeah. So before George speaks, also this session is also brought to us by another organization known as buykenya.org. Buykenya.org tries to link Kenyan entrepreneurs to the international market. So if you have a business that does a lot of export, you can check out buykenya.org or their website, then list your business there, and you can access any market that is out of Kenya. Yeah. So George, welcome and take it over.
George, thank you so much. Yes. Thank you so much, Eric and colleagues, friends, and our group members. Just besides the introduction that Eric has done, and I know this is an 4BM initiative. I'm also one of the admins for the 4BM. I've got a group where we've got a group. Eric, you could begin sharing the slides, please. We have a group where my group is called King's Rock Magazine, and we share opportunities for jobs, for scholarships, and we are also part of this program on just disseminating information. So today, basically, we'll be talking about the AfCFTA. You heard my name is George Dinda. I do, just besides working for government, we're also involved in church activities, and we thank God for His grace. I'm sure most of you have heard. Perhaps just go to the next slide. The AfCFTA, or the African Continental Free Trade Area. What you see on that slide is the map of Africa, and I don't know what you can pick up from this map. But the first thing that I see, there are quite a number of countries. Africa has 55 countries. We have big countries by land mass, and then also we have small countries that are landlocked. That means they have no water bodies that they can access. That, I mean, ships or goods can be able to be shipped directly to their coasts. But then also Africa is, if you look at this map, just discussing this map, you see a lot of fragmentation. It's one big, no, just the first slide. It's one big mass that with so many borders. African countries, quite a number of them are very poor. They are landlocked. I think there are around 16 to 17 countries in Africa that are landlocked. That means you can't access them by water or sea. And so that makes trade to be very difficult. And in the wisdom of the African Union heads of state and government, looking at how Africa is fragmented, how Africa is poor, how Africa is not trading with itself, thought on the idea about increasing inter-Africa trade. How then can we integrate? How can we help ourselves to become self-sufficient? How can we increase productivity, capacities? And so in the year 2012, the heads of state made a decision to start this project or program, the AfCFTA, that will bring Africa together and create one continental market. And they said that by around 2017, we should have that market in place. That is important because given the characteristics of Africa, we are saying that there is no alternative to economic growth and transformation in Africa. The small countries cannot do it themselves. If they were able, then Africa today would have been at a higher level of growth economically. But then experience has shown that we've not been able to do that. So there's no alternative to the AfCFTA. AfCFTA is going to be a game changer to African economic transformation. But then again, in the present times, we are being been accosted by a global pandemic, COVID-19, and you've seen how that has disrupted global supply chains, which, in our perspective, gives a further emphasis on why the AfCFTA and its implementation is critical in our present day. And then again, you've seen the Ukraine crisis, and the statistics are out there. You can see how that has affected trade in Africa, especially in terms of wheat and things like that. And so, looking at all this dynamic, both within Africa and externally outside Africa, the AfCFTA becomes an instrument that is able to push Africa into the next level. So the next slide, basically, if we could just move, shows the intention, moving from all that fragmentation into one AfCFTA market, where you're able to move, you're able to trade, you're able to invest, and you're able to feel comfortable in any other country that you're in. And so this is the idea, to create one continental market, and that is the AfCFTA. It is a flagship program of the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, that seeks to transform Africa economically for the next 50 years, to create one single market with the movement of persons, the movement of goods, and you're able to trade, talking about removing the barriers that have continued to cause the low levels of inter-Africa trade. If you look at the statistics out there, Africa, the levels of inter-Africa trade are very low, below 17%, compared to what you'll see in Europe, what you'll see in Asia, what you'll see in the Americas. And so in terms of the overview, which is really the next slide, and I've mentioned this, Eric, the next slide basically is just a snapshot of what this market is all about. I've said that the main objective is to create a single continental market of 55 member states, and of course, cumulatively, of course, based on UNECA simulation and statistics, the cumulative GDP exceeds 2.5 trillion US dollars. That's huge. And of course, we're talking about a population of 1.2 billion people, of whom 70%, I think the statistics are saying 70% are youth. So there's a great dividend there. Currently, the countries that have signed that have signed the AfCFTA agreement are 54. Africa has 55 countries. 54 countries have signed. Eritrea is yet to sign it. And of course, just beyond the signing, there is also the ratification. And currently we have 47 African Union countries that have ratified. That means that they are now party to the agreement. And I can tell you for Kenya, the process of ratification, of course, had to be to go through cabinet and had to go through parliament for it to be ratified. And then the last stage is to deposit the instruments of ratification with the African Union chairperson, as is included in the agreement. What you see again there is some critical dates that indicate, for example, March 2018. That is when Kenya. That's when the agreement was signed in Kigali, and Kenya also was part of the countries that signed that agreement in Kigali in Rwanda in March 2018. And then in March, in 20th of May 2019, that's an important date in history. It is where agreement entered into force. Now, the regulation or the provision is that the agreement enters into force after 22 countries have ratified it. That was the threshold. And so on 30th of May 2019, we had 24 ratifications and the agreement entered into force. In July of the same year, we had the operational phase of the AfCFTA being launched in Niamey, Niger, where certain instruments like the rules of origin, the African Trade Observatory, the Pan-African Payment System were launched. That was just to begin the operationalization of the AfCFTA. Then fast forward, of course, in between there, the end of that year, we had COVID-19. And so there was really not much activity. But then the Council of Ministers made a decision that given that COVID-19 is here, should we just stop these negotiations? It said, no, let us keep the momentum of the AfCFTA. We know it is critical. It's a game changer in Africa. Let us continue to negotiate online. And so through 2020, in the heart of COVID, we had online negotiations and we were able to really close up on some of the outstanding issues that were still pending in terms of the negotiations on trading goods and also trading services. And then at the end of 2020, there was a decision by the Assembly to launch the start of trading. And that's why you see the date there, 1st January 2020. The Assembly launched the start of trading within the continental market. So that means that now Africa was able to trade, albeit, or given the fact that we hadn't yet concluded all the outstanding issues, but there are provisions, transitional provisions that allowed us to start trading, and we needed to make that step. And so the heads of state said, let us launch trade. And in 2021, there was a symbolic export of some products from Ghana to South Africa. But then, and then the negotiations, continued in terms of concluding the tariff offers, concluding the rules of origin, concluding the negotiations on trading services. And then in between, in order to continue to keep and maintain the momentum of the AfCFTA, on 5th of October, and I'm sure many of you are aware about this, Kenya was able to send its first consignment of value-added tea to Accra. That was a very beautiful thing. It was a very good thing for us to make a statement that yes, indeed, let us increase the wealth in Africa. Let us create the incomes in Africa. Let us continue to create the employment in Africa. And you know how the tea sector is important for us. The small scale farmers, are able to begin reaping the benefits. And so on 5th October, in a huge event at KICC, our president was able to flag off our first consignment of value-added tea. Now, what is the institutional framework? I have just left the other bits. I'm going to come back to them. What is the institutional framework of the AfCFTA? Article 3 of the agreement creates the institutional framework of the AfCFTA. And at the apex, you have the assembly. The assembly is the apex decision-making body of the African Union. This is not only just recognized by the AfCFTA, but according to the African Union law, the assembly is the highest decision-making organ of the African Union. And so the assembly basically is made up of heads of states, head of governments of all African Union member countries. And so below it, you have the Council of Ministers. And the Council of Ministers here, they are the Council of Ministers who are responsible for trade for each African Union member state, who also come just slightly below the Assembly, and they consider the recommendations that come from the negotiations in the lower bodies that have been created by the agreement. Just below that, of course, you have the Committee of Senior Trade Officials, which is made up of, for our case, you call them principal secretaries, but in other countries, they are called permanent secretaries, other are called just secretaries. But then the idea is that you have an organ that has senior government officials that are able to discuss the issues that are come up from the other lower bodies. And then, of course, you have the AfCFTA Secretariat that currently is coordinating the negotiations and also spearheading the implementation of the AfCFTA. And of course, also there is a dispute settlement body. Of course, you know, in every free trade area, disputes are bound to arise. And so there is a mechanism that the agreement creates, that disputes that arise out of the application and implementation and even interpretation of the agreement between state parties are able to be sorted out. Now, what you see there on the right are basically the committees that have been created by the Council of Ministers. And it is in these committees that we have discussions that pertain to all those areas that are listed there. So, for example, discussions around trade in goods, the tariff offers, the rules of origin are considered in that committee. Equally, regarding trade in services, and of course, these are totally different thematic areas. Issues that touch on trade in services, that are things to do with financial services, tourism, business services, also discussed at the committee on trading goods. Of course, I've not included here the other additional committees on investment, a committee on competition policy. We have committee on intellectual property rights. You have another committee on digital trade, another committee on women and youth in trade. But then below that, you have subcommittees now where the technical discussions take place. So for example, under the Committee on Trade in Goods, you have several other committees that discuss different items that pertain to the issues that touch around trade in goods. Perhaps maybe I will going to explain this in the next slide when you're looking at the architecture of the agreement. So the next slide basically gives you a snapshot of how the AfCFTA is designed. So at the top, you have the agreement that establishes the AfCFTA. And we've said that the AfCFTA is a flagship program of the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, which is a blueprint development strategy for Africa for the next 50 years, and how Africa can be transformed economically and otherwise. So under that agreement, you have several protocols. Okay, so you have the protocol on trade in goods. And so just to give you a snapshot, what do we mean by trade in goods? So Eric, just go to the next slide. I'm going to come back to this. The next slide just shows you part of the things that we mean when we talk about trade in goods, the tangible items. Talking about trade in beef, trade in spices, trade in gems, trade in tea, trade in coffee, trade in textile. Think about it, okay? So the protocol on trade in goods, let's go back. The protocol on trade in goods basically deals with all those requirements, all those issues that will arise in the process of trade. And so first, you must have what we call Annex 1 of the protocol on trade. It's called a schedule of tariff concessions. What is a schedule of tariff concessions? A schedule of tariff concession basically is a list of all those products in your tariff book, okay, that you intend to liberalize. Just all those products, because a free trade area is all about trade liberalization, bringing down of tariffs. So that annex basically lists all the products that a particular country, for example, Kenya, is going to liberalize or to reduce the tariffs for a period of time. So, for example, you've seen there is, for example, in the next slide you had beef, and say for example, for someone to bring beef into Kenya, they're going to be charged, let's say, 20% tariff duty. So, in that schedule, we will say we want to open up that sector, for example, and within 10 years, that is for products that we have said are in category A, we are going to make the tariff duty for beef 0. So within those 10 years, every year we'll be reducing 2 percentage points. So that schedule of tariff concession basically tells you the areas which any particular country is liberalizing for a specific period of time. And there are over, any tariff book has over 5,000 products. And so here, under this schedule of tariff concessions, there are 3 categories. You have those that we're going to open up for the first 10 years. And then you have those that in category B that will be liberalized or opened up, or their tariffs will come down, the same thing, for a period of 13 years. Then there are those. So those in category B represent your strategic interest. And then those in category C, usually it's called exclusion list, are those products where you are protecting, those industries, those sectors that you are protecting because they are key and contribute a lot to your economic development. So you don't want to open them immediately. So that exclusion list basically is sectors or are products where if you were to trade in them, then you will have to pay 100% tariff duty. So for example, if that product was attracting a 35% tariff duty, paying 100% means you will be paying that 35%. That's all. Okay. Okay. So sorry for that. So you understand. So under that schedule of tariff concessions, you have those 3 categories. You have the 90% that will be liberalized immediately for 10 years. Then you have the 7% that will take 13 years to be liberalized. They're called the sensitive list. And then you have a 3% of products that won't be liberalized, but will be reviewed after 5 years, and it's called that exclusion list. So that is the first annex where you are showing all those products that you're going to liberalize. So for example, Eric, if you go to that other slide where you have beef, you have spices, and you have gems. So if you wanted to liberalize, for example, beef and ginger and spices, then you will include them in that schedule of tariff offers as category A. So so that is schedule one. I'll try to move quick so that I know this sometimes will be very complex concept, but I hope you're able to understand. Then now you have Annex 2 that talks about rules of origin. Now, rules of origin basically is what we use to determine whether a particular product will be given preferential treatment. So, for example, we're talking about that beef, and there is a criteria that is used to determine whether that beef is only obtained or that beef is originating from Africa. And if it meets that threshold, that criteria, then you're able to be given preferential treatment. So every product that will be traded within Africa, where we're saying that we want to have a one market, then and has to be given preferential treatment, then has to meet the origin criteria. Then you have another annex on customs cooperation and mutual administrative assistance, of course, which basically just spells out on how customs are going to cooperate in terms of facilitating trade across Africa. And then you have issues to do with trade facilitation, where we are talking about logistics and things like that, dealing with things that have caused intra-Africa trade to be so low, the NTBs and stuff like that. You have the technical barriers to trade. Of course, these are dealing with issues on standards. And of course, that is important that you're able to safeguard products. You're able to safeguard health in terms of ensuring that products that are being traded across Africa meet the required standards. Of course, but then you have sanitary and phytosanitary measures that basically deals with issues or standards that are required so that plants are not plants and also animals are not harmed. So there are provisions there that provide for that. And then you have another annex that deals with transit, then trade remedies. Trade remedies basically deals with issues of anti-dumping, where there is an upsurge of imports, and you're able to invoke the measures on trade remedies. So I think that's basically the idea under the trade in goods and how that operates. And then on trade in services. Now, under trade in services, it's just the same model, but in terms of liberalization, but a little bit different. Now, while under trade in goods, you have so many annexes that deal with issues on NTB. Under trade in services, we talk about a schedule of specific commitments, but also we talk about regulatory cooperation, because some of the things that are hindrance or inhibit trade in services are basically in forms of regulation. And so what do we mean when we're talking about trade in services? Now, then the other slide, Eric, if you just go one slide, two slides ahead, exactly, you will see some of the areas that have been prioritized for liberalization. Under trade in services, we're talking about gradual or progressive liberalization. And under the WTO, there are 12 sectors. No, just go back to the trade in services. Upwards, yes. Under the WTO, there are 12 sectors that have been identified. And out of those 12, under the AfCFTA, we looked at those that can be liberalized fast. And so the Council of Ministers agreed on 5 priority areas where we are supposed to look at and develop our schedule of specific commitments. Those 5 are basically what you see here. You have tourism and tourism-related services. You have communication services. You have business or professional services. And of course here, business or professional services, we're talking about doctors, we're talking about engineers, we're talking about accountants, auditors, we're talking about lawyers and all that kind of thing. And so in our schedule of specific commitments, you'll be able to see what areas the Kenyan government is liberalizing. Okay, and then also the other area is on financial services, and there you have banking services, you have insurance services, you have SACCOs and the things like that. And then in our schedule, under that sector, you will see which subsectors be liberalized under by Kenya. And then, of course, the last one is transport. And under transport, the transport sector, you have other several subsectors that include air, maritime. Sorry, you have road, and then also you're able to see how the areas that Kenya is liberalizing. So going back to that slide, you see that trade in services then has all those areas that are critical and that need to be addressed. So the first annex there is a schedule of specific commitments. Basically, what I've been explaining. What are the areas, the sectors in the services sector that you are going to open up? So you, for example, like I mentioned, under a business or professional services, you say, okay, we want to open up the engineering services, or you want to open up the accountants or the doctors, and then you see on which modes. Under services, we talk about 4 modes of supply. You have cross-border supply, then you have consumption abroad, then you have commercial presence, and then you have movement of natural persons. So you have to indicate in all those 4 modes how the areas that you're opening up in the different subsectors are going to play up with. And then moving ahead, you have another protocol on dispute, on the rules and procedures on the settlement of disputes. And I did mention this earlier, that of course in every trade arrangement or agreement, you'll expect that disputes will arise. And so you have to make a provision for a dispute settlement mechanism. And so under this agreement, we have already established a dispute settlement body. We have the panels have also been established, and now we're in the process of creating an appellate body. So, like, you know, what happens in any judicial system, you have the courts that listen to your case, then you have the judges that adjudicate the case. If you're not satisfied with the determination, you're able to move up to a higher court and appeal the decision. So similarly, we have the panels. So if there is a conflict or a dispute between state parties, then you're able to raise that. Then it will be listened by a panel. If you're not happy with that determination, then you're able to appeal that to an appellate body. And so right now, the AfCFTA Secretariat is in that tail end of establishing that appellate body. 4 members have already been sworn in. We're waiting for the remaining 3. Of course, 2 are yet to be selected to make that bench complete. So those 3, which are in green, were called phase 1 issues. So trade in goods, trade in services, and dispute settlement. And then now we had phase 2, which have largely been negotiated during the COVID period, and we must give it up to the Secretariat for just making that decision to continue negotiating despite the fact that we had COVID that was causing a lot of disruptions, and there were governmental restrictions and measures that did not, I mean, people are not moving up and down, and so somehow stalled the negotiation. And so we have the protocol on competition policy, and of course there are provisions that deals with issues to do with mergers and acquisitions, then abuse of dominant behavior and things like that. And so there are provisions on how those can be dealt with under that protocol within the AfCFTA agreement. Then you have also another protocol on investment, which basically defines who an investor is, what is an investment, and how they're going to relate, how they're going to establish their businesses. And then you have another protocol on intellectual property right, which is a very critical component or protocol on how can we protect African intellectual property. And so you have all those issues that deal with copyright, patent, trademark, geographical indicators, traditional knowledge and cultural expressions, plant varieties, all of those being the articles that speak to them. And so basically those form the initial part of phase 2 issues. And then again, in the wisdom of the assembly, they said that let us also have a protocol on digital trade, given the role of e-commerce and the digital economy. And so we have that additional protocol that basically deals with things to do with cross-border financial transfers, data governance, emerging technologies on, like what you've been hearing, the Bitcoin and the blockchain and stuff like that. But then it's really a protocol that facilitates these other protocols. Okay, like it gives them their place. And then lastly, you have a protocol that deals with issues around women and youth. Of course, the agreement does speak the fact that we need to have inclusion. And so that protocol basically is going to provide a way in which some of the challenges that the youth and the women face in trade are being addressed. We're going to have what we call a simplified trade regime that will be able to have provisions on how perhaps we can simplify customs procedures for them, so that at the end of the day, trade is facilitated. If you're able to understand this, then you're home and dry, because this is now what the AfCFTA is. At the moment, we have 47 tariff offers. That represents more than 85%. We're almost there. In terms of rules of origin, we are 90%. We are doing very well. In terms of schedule specific commitments, we have 21 that have been verified, but there are 46 offers. We've really made good progress. The protocols on competition policy, intellectual property rights, and investment have already been adopted. They were adopted in February by the heads of state and government, and so we are looking into implementation. Then, as we move forward, then what are some of the initiatives that are there? And so you have what we call the guided trade initiative. Now, if you've been following closely, you realize that despite the fact that a lot of progress had been made, there were no movement of goods. There was still no meaningful or commercially meaningful trade happening within the continent. And so the Secretariat, working together with the Council of Ministers, decided to have this initiative. And this initiative basically it's like just a fast track sort of initiative that allows or gives an incentive to state parties to begin to trade. Of course, there is a threshold that was set that for you to be able to participate in this initiative, then you must have, for example, established an ad hoc committee. You must have printed the certificates of origin. You must have submitted your tariff offers to show which product, because it was going to happen on a reciprocity basis. And so Kenya, having fulfilled all those conditions, became one of the pilot countries. The countries that you see there part of the countries that participated. There are 8 countries. You had Kenya, Ghana, Egypt, Tunisia, Mauritius, Tanzania, Rwanda. I don't know with and Cameroon. Yeah, there were 8 countries that participated. And so this is where now on 5th of October last year, our president was able to flag off our first consignment that was shipped, consignment of value added tea that was shipped to Ghana, and there was a grand reception. And I just forgot, perhaps maybe I'll see whether I can get you able to see part of our Getepa tea in the Ghanaian supermarket. And if you're in Ghana and maybe perhaps you've forgotten to carry Kenyan tea bags, if you go to one of the supermarkets there, you'll be able to find Kenyan tea bags and enjoy your Kenyan tea. So this is one of the initiatives that was started last year. This year, we are looking at increasing the scope in terms of the number of countries that are participating. It's been opened up further. And again, also in terms of the products that are being included under that initiative. And so this is one of the areas that we can say has been a success. There's great momentum. Kenya has been able to export energy saving GCOs. Imagine energy saving GCOs have been exported to Accra, and they're also able to enjoy. I mean, part of the things that we're enjoying here. And so that's a very good statement, of course, in view of the current discussions on green technology and climate smart technologies. You can imagine, Kenyan energy saving GCOs being used in big streets in Ghana. That's something to celebrate. The next initiative is the African Trade Observatory. That's the next slide. And this is important because one of the factors that have contributed to low levels of inter-Africa trade is the information gap. The business community don't know where they don't understand the market conditions, the pricing. And so the African Trade Observatory is this platform that consolidates African trade data and statistics, and also is useful for policymakers in terms of making decisions that are backed up with data and statistics. And also is useful for business community to be able to know what markets what are the prevailing market conditions elsewhere, what are the SPS requirements, what are the TBT requirements, what are the pricing. And so this somehow helps to bridge that information gap. We're also able to check out what the opportunities that are existing elsewhere. So, for example, you can check if you're from Kenya and then you want to export to Botswana, and then you are, for example, looking at the particular product either by the HS code or by its product description. Then you're able to click, and then it's going to bring to you the information that you're looking at. And then the other initiative. So the African Trade Observatory is very, very important. It is live now. If you go to ato.org, you're able to get that information. And then and perhaps we hope that will be able to bridge the gap in information. The next slide basically is a slide that speaks to how we can report, monitor, and eliminate non-tariff barriers. And so it's an NTB mechanism. The next slide. And this also is live. For example, if you are exporting in a particular country and you're experiencing some challenges that, in your view, is a form of a non-tariff barrier, then you're able to go to this platform, and it is live. It is live. You're able to go to this platform and report that complaint. All right, and then it has also another section where you can interact with it in terms of understanding whether the frequently asked questions are able to get more insights into that. So again, this is live, and you're able to interact with it. The next slide again is another important initiative of the AfCFTA. It's called the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. Now, this is important because you can imagine if perhaps you're in this call and you've traveled anywhere outside Africa, Kenya, and you realize you'll have to change your Kenya shillings into dollars, and maybe if you're going to Europe, maybe France or Germany, then again you have to change that. If you have to change maybe your dollars into euros, and so there are a lot of transactions that are involved across currencies. So basically, the idea behind the PAPs is to be able to have that seamless transaction across borders, where you're trading with the Kenya shilling across maybe West Africa, whether it is the CDs or is the CAF, and then they're able to get rid of that, exchange regime. So the Pan-African and payment system has been designed in such a way that you avoid those transactional costs. And studies show that Africa loses over $5 billion in transactional costs alone. You can imagine, huge amount. And so this is an initiative that is designed to reduce business cost, transactional cost. It's a good idea. And so under the AfCFTA, this system will be operational. It has been piloted among 5 countries in West Africa, and we expect that the pilot, again, the scope of the countries will be increased so that business community are able to begin to enjoy the benefits within that. So that's the idea around the Pan-African payment and settlement system. And then as we finish up, we have the African e-tariff book, like I tried to mention earlier. Basically, the tariff book just shows all the products that each country is liberalizing. That means that each country is bringing their tariffs down. And again, also this is quite user-friendly. You're able to click on where you're exporting from. If you are exporting from Kenya, and then you want to export to Ghana, for example, it will show you the applicable or the applied tariff for that product that you want to export. And then also it shows you which category it is. So whether it is category A among the 90%, or it is category B, or it is in category C, that means then you're able to pay the duty that is available there. Maybe in our future webinars, I'll be able to show this live. Again, if you go to the AfCFTA website, you're able to interact with this. It's quite user friendly. And then the second last slide there is the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, which again is such a huge exhibition that is held every 2 years. The last one was held in South Africa, and huge deals are signed during this Inter-Africa Trade Fair. It's a marketplace. And again, an opportunity for businesses to interact and to network and to create strategic alliances. So it's another initiative of the AfCFTA. There's one more that is, I've not put it in my slides, but it's the adjustment facility, which again, another creative initiative that allows, for example, countries that feel will experience some revenue erosion in the short run are able to get a grant that can cushion themselves. Again, if there are manufacturers that due to the expanded market want to increase their capacities, then they're able to approach the fund and also get some money for that expansion. Again, there is another credit line that is being designed to support the SMEs that we want to trade within the continent. And then, of course, that last slide basically just talks about moving forward. What do we need to do? I think what is important for us is to be able to be in the negotiating table to continue negotiating the outstanding issues. On there are 2 elements on rules of origin that we need to conclude: the textiles from chapter 50 to 63, textiles and clothing that are important for industrialization of Africa, and again, motor vehicles, chapter 87. We are saying again, as Kenya, we need to implement our strategy, we develop a strategy that provides a framework for the implementation, for the effective implementation of the AfCFTA. And I think we need to implement that more critically. And of course, that's why also, again, we are having this webinar. Thank you to 4BM for making this available, is to create awareness on the AfCFTA. We need people to know that the market is being created. There's market access across Africa, and that the businesses are able to plug in and tap into those opportunities. And of course, again, you're talking about capacity building and stakeholder engagements. Of course, quite important. The market is there. We need to see how we can rally our private sector, protect their interest, even as we negotiate this market. I want to end from there. And thank you so much for this opportunity just to be able to interact and share this concept on the AfCFTA. Some bit might seem to be a little bit technical, but I hope at least this just creates some idea in your mind of what this AfCFTA really is all about. Thank you so much, Asante sana.
Thank you so much, George Dinda. That was very insightful, and because we will continue with this session, because I'm sure we just covered like a quarter of what we need to cover, because now probably the next session will be now how would this benefit maybe a Kenyan entrepreneur, and how do they just get into this and ensure that they get the best out of this. Yeah. So let me just check in some 2 questions. Okay, there's a question here. Does AfTA have any space for the consideration of facilitating free movement of people, that is traders?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Now, there are 2 aspects around that. Like I mentioned earlier, under the traded services, we're talking about under mode 4, movement of natural persons. Provides a framework within that can happen. Okay. And so there is a provision for that under traded services movement of natural persons, whether they are professionals or they are people who are going to supply. They're called suppliers. And so that is that. But then also within the bigger framework, Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, we have another protocol that is called the Protocol on Movement of Persons, Rights of Residence, and Rights of Establishment, that basically deals with how Africans will be able to move across each borders and how that will be governed. Yes, so there are provisions around that, and the discussions are still are going on that.
Okay. So thank you very much, George. I think maybe I won't take more questions because we'll still do this some other time. I think after 1 week or so, we'll still organize this so that we just continue, making it a little bit clear on how especially Kenyan entrepreneurs can take this chance to just ensure that they trade freely across Africa. Yeah. And also thank you very much for everyone who joined. Just look out for another session like this. We will advertise that on our social media pages. When you go to social media, all social media pages, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, search for Forgotten Bottom Millions. Yeah, you'll find us there, and we always share opportunities like this. And also search for George Dinda, I think, on all social media pages. Right, Dinda?
That's it. You can just provide maybe my email ID so that if they have other questions, we can interact. Just be on the web.
Okay, fine. Then also go to buykenya.org and take the opportunity that they currently have. They're currently listing businesses for free. You don't have to pay anything. So just go to buykenya.org and list your business there so that you're able to access markets outside of Kenya. Yeah. So guys, thank you for staying up to now. Allow me to end this session now. So see you next time as we continue this series on AfTA. Bye. Have a good evening.